Welcome to the Diesel Podcast presented by DFC Diesel. How's it going, Lenny?
It's going very well. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. It feels like time has flown by since we chatted, is it right after the first of the year or right around the holiday time we chatted. Now we're like in the springtime, race season's starting up. People are getting their trucks fixed to do some summer camping and hauling and stuff, so it's going by fast.
Yeah, it feels, just a change of administration, even though there's not any new rules, everybody feels like there's new rules. So people are like, heck, I just was at NHRDA in Arizona last weekend. And man, oh man, I swear to you, like the park is smaller than the UCC park, but the crowd was so thick and there was so many people there. I was like, holy smokes, like it felt like the biggest event that I'd ever been to. It's pretty rad.
Yeah, there's so much enthusiasm out there, and I think like it gets back to the cornerstone of what diesel performance is. Like if you like got in a time machine and you went back to, let's call it like 2006 or so. All right, you could go get yourself a brand new LBZ, you could get yourself a 5.9 common rail, and you'd go to events, or it could be at the track or dyno day or something, and you'd see one guy with really nice wheels and tires, maybe a Smarty on his 5.9, super clean truck, look awesome. Then you'd see another guy roll up, and you've got like, glorified drag slicks on it, compounds, a stack coming out of the bed, and it's going to go lay down 900,000 horsepower. And so you could have these two trucks, same year, and you could take them two wildly different paths, right? And
Yep.
it feels like for a really long time, it was like, well, buy an old one and do that, or you get a new one, do the wheels, tires, make it look cool, and that's like your daily, that's like the truck you tow with. And I think the
Yeah.
cornerstone of performance is really being able to take your build, your truck down either path you want.
I mean, the backyard builds, the stuff where dudes are building stuff for like a good time, you can kind of use that truck to tow your boat or your wife's horses or go drag racing, maybe run like a mid 11 or a high, like low 12 or whatever. Fast is even a 13 really, but and then if you wanted to go to the county pull and hook up, you might throw some airbags under it, jack them up to 100 pounds and maybe some traction bars, and the same truck kind of does all those events. And now for the longest time, I feel like that was kind of lost because like so many people got so hung up on if you can't delete it, then you can't make performance. And that isn't really, it's not real at all. There was several years where the trucks that were made pre DPFs, and you can still hot rod and race all those things without removing or deleting. So there's still and if you're crazy enough, and there are guys that are crazy, like for those of you that is crazy, like my hat's off to you, but you're crazy. You go and buy a 75 or $80,000 pickup truck, maybe a $90,000 truck, brand new. And then you take the 6 speed or the 8 speed or the 10 speed training out of it, and you put like a 4 speed back in it, and you put a standalone in it because it's more durable and it's going to hold more power. So you got a brand new truck, let's call it 100, and you spend 20 grand on doing a 48 with a standalone in it. And then you build a big set of compounds. Then you realize like connecting rods and stuff aren't going to hold all that kind of power. So then you're 30 grand deep in a motor. And that's all so you can have really badass seats and basically none of the stuff in the dash works correctly. Like that's crazy. And it's still way too heavy. Like it's still, it's not, but you can still purchase a '05, '06, '02 Ford Chevy Dodge and, do whatever you want for 50 grand and that thing's going to fly. And you can
Yeah.
jump in your brand new truck and you can set cruise control with your 10 speed or your 8 speed and you can drive home and you be in comfort. Like, and that thing's got fancy wheels on it too. So you're still cool.
Hey, Diesel fans, our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 20% off code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code 20TD8FR26, you get 20% off your cart and free shipping over $50. So if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house, they've got you covered with a whole bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, different handle designs, and it's a great way to save some money and get some cool gear. Again, go to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code TD8 FR26 and get 20% off your cart and free shipping over $50. Yeah. Well, and the bar has changed. Like, I remember magazines having somebody on the cover that made 1100, 1200, 1300 horsepower, and it was like earth shattering news. And then I saw last week that you have an engine that did 3,000 horsepower on fuel only.
Yeah.
And we were talking a bit before the podcast, and I think you had mentioned like that's the only common rail you know of on the planet that's done 3,000 horsepower on an engine dyno on fuel only.
Yeah. So like I've always said, like, if people are making 3,000 horsepower, why don't they dyno it and post it on YouTube or whatever and just sell the heck out of, like, this is my combination. Here's what it makes. You can call today and buy one of these if you want one. But those, the super stock guys in pro pulling, they are in pickup truck land. They are they're the baddest of the baddest, like they make, no matter what they make, whether it's 2,800 or 3,500, no matter what they make, those things have so much power that, you got guys like Nichols Tire and all these other dudes that are buying, bar tires, and then they're cutting them specifically for front or rear, and specifically so it doesn't like pile up too much dirt in front of the sled without giving up a bunch of traction. And the science behind even just the bar tires is like pretty wild. Like, you can spend 10 grand on a set of bar tires with wheels right now, and that's going to put you right in the game with the latest greatest technology. But even with that much traction on the ground, and these things are 20-inch wide wheels, you still, like, those guys are making enough power that, like, when they brap the throttle, that thing, all four tires just brap, they just come undone. So, it really, that is a driver's class. They make so much power. I don't care what you think they make, whether you think it's 2,500 or 5,000. They have so much horsepower that they have less traction than they do power. And, like, what's cool about that is it's super stock, so you can run as many turbos as you want, but the more turbos you add, the more intake air temperature you mess up. So then you got to keep spraying with more and more water. And I've never built a super stock mechanical motor, but I think they're pretty low in compression. And I think that they say, like, that they gain horsepower by spraying water. And so far now, we've found, myself and another camp who I really trust has lost power with common rail on water. So, which makes sense to me because you're quenching the flame out. And, the other theory is well, you squirt water in it and it makes steam, and steam drives the turbos harder. But in our experiment so far, we've not gained power. We've lost power with water. But the unfortunate part is when you got, like, the turbochargers at that level, we just use that Hertz 4.8. So let's call it a $9,000 turbo, and you don't really want to blow it up. So the same turbo could be used on the big tractors with, like, big cubic inch motors. And of course, they're going to eat that amount of air and less RPM. But still, when you spin them that hard, those things will make 100, 110, 120 pounds of boost in a single stage, which means the compressor wheel and comp cover are going to get super hot. So, like, Brandon Hart, who's a buddy of mine and the guy that, basically owns the company, him and his brother, they own that company. And he said, you need to spray water at this thing or else you will blow it up. So, since we don't want to just spend 9 grand trying to prove him wrong, we heated the warning and put water in front of it to keep it alive. And, measuring compressor discharge temperature, it's hot. So even with water going in it, it's still hot. And then we sprayed water at the intake ports on a different hit, and that's where we lost power. So our goal with that was, like, me and my, like, I've got the mind where, like, I knew that common rail could do it, and I knew that we had the quantity to do it. And, I watched what Skylar and the guys in the calibration room been doing for, like, the past couple of years. And I wanted to show the planet that we had the quantity out of an injector with a fast enough rate that we not only could be competitive, but we can actually do extremely well in that realm. So I sold my super stock chassis to a buddy of mine, and I was like, all right, like we'll build the common rail loader now. You'll put it in, then we'll go running. And of course, nobody wants to be the first guy to do something that's never been done successfully. So I kind of got tired of begging, friends and customers to let me show them it was possible. And I just decided like it was time to build one. So, I called up Zach Hamilton and said, hey, Zach, you've got some badass block, right? Oh, yeah. Well, here's the game that I want to do. And he's like, I'm in. Like, where's it go? And I said, well, send it to Chad Perkins. So he sent it to Perkins Diesel in Missouri. It showed up. It looks really nice when you get it. Like, it's a really super sweet product. Chad and him talked about the camshaft. And there again, like we didn't go really big on the camshaft. Shockingly, like I know that people are not going to believe it, so I'm not going to say it. But basically, we kind of went with the same stuff that works in the 3-inch guys, even down to the same injector set. And we just stretched the legs out on the injectors bigger. That way, we already knew that we were dealing with a proven platform. We just had to stand on the injectors even harder and put more air to it and see if it worked. If there was a problem, at least we would know where to start troubleshooting because it would have been simple as just put a 3-inch charger on it and then diagnose it as per normal. So Boulder ECU, Chad runs those. He tunes those all the time. It's got a waggler head with Jessel, and it's a ductile iron head because big cylinder pressure, big bang, and loss of force trying to tear things apart. It's got Jessel's 8 mm stuff in it in the rocker arms and all that. So it's a rocker, roller cam, Jessel upstairs. Cylinder head was really expensive, like kind of 20 grandish. And then the crankshaft, it's a billet crankshaft. It's the same stroke as anybody else's 6.7 on the planet. Again, we were trying to prove that what we'd been running was going to work in this game. And, like my brain, I was like, I don't need as much torque as they have. I would rather de-stroke it and let it eat another 500 RPM upstairs and get rid of some of the torque. So when we're playing, say 3,000 horsepower, we're playing at 2,000 foot-pounds. And I'm glad that we voted to go the way we went because we proved that just a basic 6.7 with a 1-inch deck plate, solid fill, CGI Hamilton block, it works. It works just fine. Like it carries 3,000 and just a little bit. Like it's not quite 3,100, but it carries within 30 horsepower of that from 5,000 RPM up to 5,500 RPM. So it's pretty much a horse. Like it's a Clydesdale. And so Chad and Andrew and Scott and basically the whole team at Perkins, they've got a lot of hours into dynoing and troubleshooting. We ran out of pump with two 14 mm. We had two alpha pumps on there. We ran out of pump. We had to go to a triple front cover, which Ryan Bean made me years ago. And we got two S&S reverse rotation pumps. And we've got the one 14 mm. So we got three 14s flowing diesel into that thing now. It's got an oil pump that's belt driven on it. So we've got enough volume to make sure it's not a dry sump motor, but it is a belt driven oil pump. Crankshaft head, pistons are diamond, same stuff that we would run in like the 3-inch program, but we actually used a little bit different bowl because we were trying to make something. Again, we've never really made this kind of power. So when you're spraying something with nitrous, you want to use a small bowl, which gives your piston bowl a bunch of meat on the shoulder so the nitrous doesn't torch through the rings near as fast. Like they take nitrous beatings a lot better. And we were like, well, is it the nitrous or is it the extra RPM or is it the fact that they're making that much power? And we just tried to build something super reliable. So we chose to go a little bit more conservative on the piston as well. But it's still just a diamond piston. It's nothing. It wasn't a one-off set or anything. It was something that, somebody could buy right now if they knew the specs or whatever, right? But So Boulder ECU, Chad Perkins tuned, and then I mean ultimately like I've got the funny part is like the in my friends group, I got Chase Fleece and I got Patrick O'Brien, and both of those guys are like top shelf engine builders. And they've always been in the background going, do it, dude, just go for it, like try it and see what happens. And whenever, they both, all three of those guys play in different realms. Patrick has the most experience out of all of us because he does a lot of big tractor stuff and he does a lot of like, PPL super stock mechanical stuff. And, again, he's got customers he has to service. So he wasn't willing to take a chance to be first. But now that it's been done, I feel like it's probably going to be, it'll be something that, I mean, it's easy. You just get in it. Yeah, after it's tuned and calibrated, you plug in an AFR that you're after. We ended up 250 MPa worth of pressure and about 1,500 microseconds of injector on time. And that gave us about 980 mm cubed. Um, EGT's south of 1,600 degrees, and timing is less than 30 degrees. So you legit like you plug in an AFR ratio, in this case, like 11.7. And once you plug in the AFR, like no matter where you go, the truck's always going to try and achieve that AFR. So it'll reprogram itself going down the track to maintain proper air fuel ratio, which, in essence gives you proper, uh, exhaust gas temperature as well. So, we've learned a lot over the last few years. And I just think that the guys that build 3-inch stuff, they're so competitive and they're making so much power on those things that everybody's kind of squeezed every last little thing. There will be no in 3-inch. There's never going to be like, oh, look, I found 50 horse. Like those guys are scratching for 7, 8, 9, 10 every year now. It's basically, left up to the turbocharger guys. So if you got three people, whether it's Harts or Apex or Weimers or whoever that's building turbos in that 3-inch, like those guys kind of have the keys to the next group of horsepower because we've already proven that whether it's 3-inch, 3.6, or super stock, like we already have the quantity available and the rate trace is amazing. So that we can, where the other super stock guys, they have to start them on ether. So it's like, a few cans of John Deere ether to get it to light. And you're just going to push a button on ours and it's going to start and it's going to run. And then timing, like those guys have to rechamber a big diameter line. So they're at like 50 degrees advance, 55 degrees advance, because they're having to blow what's on top of the plunger into the line, rechamber the line, and then pop the injector. So where it really lands compared to the motor, it's probably not 50 degrees, but we're getting away at like 28, 29, sub 30. So our cylinder pressures are now lower as well. Parasitic drag on the motor because when you start injecting fluid 50 degrees before top dead center, the flame is starting to build pressure, and pretty soon you get to a point where there's so much pressure that it's slowing the motor down it's not making more, it's making less power. So we played with that a lot as well to try and figure out what timing needed to be there. Um, Man, all in all, it's been, my friends group is pretty tight, and I owe, it was my idea, and I was the one pushing for it. Like we spent a lot of money to build it, but I feel like we just changed common rail diesel in general. Like you can see, Josh McCormick has made over 4,000 horsepower, corrected on the chassis dyno. But if you listen to any of the chassis dyno hits compared to an engine dyno hit, an engine dyno properly set up is going to allow 200 engine RPM increase per 1 second. So you just plug in your numbers. If you want it to grab from 5 grand to 5,500, it's going to allow you 200 engine RPM per 1 second. And that's all it's going to give you. So if there was no such thing as traction slip and 100% load, which the chassis dynos can't give that kind of load, you just blow the tires off of them, which Josh has done now twice. It's the biggest truth booth on the planet. It's the most, it makes me extremely proud to have cooked up the idea and kind of pushed, everybody in my company has had a part in this because like they're having to work so we can buy parts and, pay. Chad's a great guy, but he still has a company to run and it's not his dream, it's mine. So, between dyno time and machining time and all that, like it wasn't a cheap process, but it was proof possible that we can do it. And now as soon as we did it, Skylar was like, well, if we're at 1500 US, we need to get another 100 mm cube to drop it down to here. And I'm like, yeah, this was the reason. Like, I wanted to start a new idea, not do what we've always done and be happy. So it just makes me, I'm really proud of all the people that had a hand in this thing. And right now, Rex Gully, one of our fabricators here at my house, he's actually in Texas installing, and he's a TIG welder. He can fabricate pretty well. So he's actually building all the plumbing and piping for the motor to sit in the truck. So it's going to be in a white Ford called Prime, and that's owned by Preston Collins. So it'll be in Florida in 7 days.
Even with all these like awesome companies and these people that you know really well, when it was going on the dyno, did you still kind of think in the back of your mind, what if this thing like supernovas itself like on the dyno? And you think of like the cost of the different parts and everything else. Like, does that run through your mind at all that first time?
Absolutely. I mean, it when you're at that level, it's going to go through my mind every single time that we light it. Because that's just a shit ton of power. And like Zach Hamilton, he's like, the block's beautiful, and there's a lot of meat where there needs to be a lot of meat, and it's CGI, so it's a super cool part. But he's like, dude, if that thing develops any hairline cracks, it starts to weep oil out any of the fancy paint, like let me know immediately and I'll get you another block, because like we need to look. He wants to diagnose within the block if it's metallurgically an error, or if it's like maybe somehow how we mounted like our girdle, and maybe somehow, there's a lot of machine work that goes into that to get a deck plate and a girdle tied to it. But if we start cracking it before we blow the thing into 10,000 pieces and potentially hurt somebody, he would rather get it back so he can look at it and figure out, like, okay, this is a new level. Like, this is not everybody can be like, yeah, I'm making 3,000 horsepower on fuel only. Like, it's a feat. I mean, three 14 millimeter pumps with nitrous. I mean, that's like close to 5,500 horsepower of the fuel probably. But since on fuel with just boosting water, we're never going to be that efficient. We don't have control over our environment like that. So, dude, it's a task. Like, it is a task, and now we have a recipe. This is first base. Like, as far as I'm concerned, 2026 was the year we were going to do this. And in my world, we're at first base. And secondly, we're going to bring it home. Skylar's got, an idea for a set of injectors he wants to put in it. And I know what I want to do with turbochargers now. So the turbos, like I do want to build a set of triples for it. And they're not going to be huge. Like, they're not going to be like super stock kind of stuff. Like, it's two of the turbos are not even fancy. Like, but the thing is the lower you keep your boost pressure, the lower you keep your intake air temperature, and the higher you keep the oxygen density. Now, anybody could say, well, you can erase all that bullshit, Lenny, by just putting a big ass intercooler in it. And that's totally true. But why do you need to add all the extra pressure and have a really expensive intercooler and melt 100 pounds of ice in 14 seconds if you don't need to? Like, why do you need to do that if it's not needed? So my brain is like, well, we'll just build a really cute set of triples that aren't that expensive, actually. And because, a CFM is a CFM, and oxygen quantity is oxygen quantity, and, like a pound per minute's a pound per minute. So it doesn't matter if it comes from China, Mongolia, Cummins, it doesn't matter. And I'm not negating any of the big turbo companies because I know they do a lot of R&D. And when you're class specific, you have to use a Hartz. You have to use an Apex. You have to use a Weimer, or you're not going to be at the top of that class. It's different. This is like, kind of run what you brung. And, as long as it's enough, it's enough. Hell, I tried. My first feed at this was a Columbus diesel turbocharger circa 2005-ish. That was like an old super stock 5.250 inducer. And I got that thing to make 2750, and that was it. But that was a 5.25, like tractor turbo from like 0506. And it still damn near 3K. Like, it's a big turbo though. The Hartz 4.8 is going to drive damn near like a variable vane turbo on a stock pickup truck. It'll spool up really easy, and it gains horsepower. Like, even though it's a smaller inducer, blade technology and turbine technology, the way that those guys move, and every year they're updating, they're constantly evolving and getting better, 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 better. And a smaller turbo makes more power than something from 15 years ago that's way bigger.
Something you had mentioned before the podcast I thought would be really interesting to talk about is you were telling me the difference with how you run an engine on an engine dyno and the stress of it and how you can incrementally add more RPM or as you're revving it up, like the kind of demand that it places on an engine is different than when we see them like in a truck on a dyno, going in a quick burst. Can you talk more about when it's on an engine dyno, the kind of stress that it's going to put on a setup like that?
Yeah. So torque is what you feel put you in the seat, right? And then as torque, like if you look at any dyno graph, you'll see that torque falls off pretty early, and then horsepower continues to carry out. So if you take, say, my engine that we just built at 3,000 horsepower, we started the sweep at 5,000 RPM, and then we ended the sweep at 5,500 RPM. If we did that from, say, 4,000 RPM to 4,500, the torque would be it'd be a monster number bigger than it is at 5,000, and it probably would cut the block in half. So when you're on a chassis dyno, you've got guys that understand it. So a Josh McCormick, for example, he knows that in order to make a bunch of horsepower, you have to leave torque in the rearview mirror. So he starts his hit at like 5,000 RPM and lets it eat. And I think, well, you've talked to him about that. Didn't that thing end at like 62 or something?
Something like that, I think.
So in basically 1.5 seconds, that thing eats like 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds of nitrous, and it makes a truckload of horsepower and a truckload of mile an hour. Like, it just accelerates the wheels, right? But it's doing that from 5,000 to like 6,200 RPM. So his torque number is not going to be that high because he's so much greater than 5,250. But if you're sub 5,250, if you've got an old 12 valve that made 215 horsepower stock, and you put a set of 3,000 RPM governor springs in it and give it 400 horsepower, it makes like 800 or 900 foot-pounds. Well, if the math kept mathing that same direction, then my 3,000 would be like 75 or 8,000 foot-pounds of torque, which no B series block on the planet is ever going to take that kind of like load. So you have to increase horsepower and you have to increase RPM. Another example would be like somebody's like, say, I had a Z06 Corvette, and it's a C8 Z06. So the thing revs up to like, tons of RPM. But horsepower and torque cross over at 5,250. So at like 8,000 RPM, even though it's making a ton of horsepower, it's not making any torque. So it makes it to where like Chevrolet could put a warranty on the thing, because the horsepower is not really what's killing parts, it's the torque. Engine RPM is like, you're not really measuring horsepower, you're measuring torque. The horsepower is just a math calculation. Is that making sense at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're okay, and another example would be like in a 3-inch, you're going to sweep that because going down the track, a 3-inch inducer is going to run out of air long before 5,000 RPM, but it's going to make more, or excuse me, it's going to make a lot less power. So you're going to be able to sweep that from, say, like high threes to, if you swept it to 48 or 4,900 RPM, you would see that it's already falling on its face because compressor inducer, the motor is eating up all the air and it can't keep making that same horsepower level out. So it just falls on its face. But you have to harness that thing lower because it's just not going to make near as much power. So yeah, like engine dynos are super cool tools. You just can't sweep them all the exact same. And a lot of those guys, they'll sweep them from say 5,500 RPM and they let the dyno pull it back down, which will make a better number because you generated so much heat and the turbines are so much warmer because you've got 5,500 RPM going through them. And then the dyno drags it down to 5,000 RPM. And when it gets to five, software tells it to cut out. And then the operator lifts off on the gas pedal, and that's that. So, had I done that same sweep with this motor, I don't know, maybe it would pick up 100, maybe it would pick up 200, maybe it would pick up 300. But my brain says like a dyno is supposed to be an accelerometer measurement tool, meaning 0 to like 100, not 100 down to 0. So we've always just swept from bottom up. Just how we collect our data.
Yeah, I mean, the science behind it is so interesting. It could probably be like a series. Is there so many parts of this, like the metallurgy of the block? You're talking about turbos and the technology with the inducer and compressor wheels. You're talking about the injectors and how they're fueling it, and then you get into the science of how do you transfer that power and what else is it going through once it goes to the back of that flex plate and what's it hooked to, and then it's going into the drive line and the suspension and the tires, and how do you bring all of this on? It's not just like this brute force crank as much power as I can and then but go perform to the expectation that you want. There's a lot of science behind it.
You know, like I remember Gale Banks like way 20 some years ago, right? And he was always talking about like vehicle weight mile per hour. And of course, I was really young, really ignorant, didn't actually kind of understand what he was talking about. But he would always bring enough power to the party to do what the goal was, whether it was a mile an hour or an ET. He would bring that much power to the party. But he didn't bring, like the rest of us diesel guys, we brought everything and we were constantly breaking stuff, right? So his way was I'm here to win races. So if it takes 900 horsepower to win this race and go from A to B in this much time, that's what I'm going to bring. To where like the rest of us were like, man, we're just bringing everything we've got. And then we're going to cross our fingers and hope it all stays together. Well, 20 years ago, like if you were at a racetrack, if you saw 30 passes go in one night, you probably saw at least a half dozen of them blow up. And then it was track cleanup, and it's just a massive pain. So, yeah, I mean, God bless people for like getting smarter, and then in niche markets, right? Like now you've got you got Fleece who's building a block. Like there's, I was at their property, just their shop, which is amazing, 200,000 square feet, and they've got block after block after block after block, billet fleece blocks sitting there, and they're all going through the same processes, and they've got this massive, like, huge mill, and it's, you put in 800 pounds worth of aluminum, you pull out like 200 pounds, and the rest of it's just big pile of chips in the machine, So they've got this Mazak just making chips and making super cool parts. But that block is like the brainchild of, we need to make sure that customers that want to go this fast, like a Michael Cordova, that motor has to be safe. It can't be like, the Cummins block held on, we got lucky again. You can't, at this level, like people will get hurt. So the engineering that goes into that block is like, it was never liquid cooled. It's not designed to be liquid cooled. It's built to take a beating and provide lightweight. So when you're going fast or when you're truck pulling or whatever, you can put the ballast where you want the ballast. But that's one niche. You got turbo guys. You got guys like Hartz and them that are like doing nothing but turbos and superchargers now. You got piston people that make nothing but pistons, and they're doing it from Porsches to Bugattis to whatever, and they happen to make really badass like truck pistons. And then you got machine shops that are just like really starting to get forteed into doing what it is we need them to do. So I love I kind of love the direction that I stayed. Like I stayed in the injector wheelhouse, and the more that we grow, the more that I realize we need to grow even more because there's not enough people like us that are building just injectors. So you got dudes that are like injectors and steering and transmissions and torque converters and all their stuff's like, man, it's okay. But nobody's really begging for any of it. You know, it's just like they've got a full catalog. And the way that I see the industry going now is like you've got these hardcore specialty shops that are just building wicked parts for whatever it is they do. Like people ask me all the time, like, well, would you my like 6 liter or 7.3s? I'm like, no. Like we just don't have Huey stuff anymore. But I make nozzles because we're an EDM shop. Like we can make the nozzle and we've got customers that buy nozzles from us. We're really good at nozzle work. Let's just go with that. Let's stay there. But I'm not going to take my common rail dudes and make them become Huey guys again. Like that just makes no sense. So there's plenty of good Huey guys out there, and we probably provide nozzles to, a decent amount of them right now. So you're still going to get a really good nozzle. You're just not going to get it assembled and calibrated by us because we're out of manpower and we're out of building. And I think that this entire industry is it's getting bigger and it's getting busier, which is the opposite of what people 3 or 4 or 5 years ago thought was going to happen.
Hey, diesel fans, it's that time of year where cold temperatures can cause diesel fuel to gel or fuel filters to clog. Power Service Diesel Fuel Supplement plus cetane boost is designed to prevent fuel gelling, prevent fuel filters from icing, have faster cold starts with a cetane boost, and it contains a slick diesel lubricator to protect pump and injectors from wear. When temperatures drop below 30 degrees Fahrenheit, Power Service Diesel Fuel Supplement plus cetane boost will help keep your truck on the road. If you have untreated diesel fuel and the fuel filter has frozen or the fuel has gelled, Diesel 911 is an emergency use product to help get your truck up and running. It reliquefies gelled fuel, removes water, and de-ices frozen fuel filters. You can find Power Service Diesel Fuel Supplement plus cetane boost and Diesel 911 at local auto parts stores and online. Go to powerservice.com to learn more and use the Where to Buy feature to find a local retailer near you. Common question we get from you guys a lot is, hey, I need a diesel engine. I either, I can't wait this long to get one, or normal place I get stuff from it just takes too long, or they don't have the parts in it that I need. Maybe my truck's not stock or I tow heavy with it. I don't want to go back with just a stock engine. DFC Diesel is a sponsor of the podcast. We worked with them, hand in hand on doing episodes, answering technical questions. They have a complete lineup of Cummins, Duramax, and Power Stroke remanufactured engines that are set to a standard of ISO 9001 2015 standards, which is a huge deal in the aftermarket. And there's certain levels of quality testing, validation that are required for that. So when you get one of those engines, the type of quality that's built behind it with an industry-leading warranty that's really comprehensive. And the other thing with that is sometimes the options that are out there, it's a basic OEM engine. You want a little bit more. You don't want to have the same failure again. So there's a bunch of different series of engines that they have, from core, street, tow haul, and also the Speed of Air series, which we've covered on the podcast before. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. And if you have questions about that, reach out to them. If you don't know the type of engine that you're looking for, if you go to dfcdiesel.com, there's a ton of info there. You can send an email or you can reach out to them. Also, they're working with Speed of Air pistons, which it's the only piston that pays for itself. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. So you can add that into your build and be able to get better fuel economy, increase power, increase torque, and better engine life out of it. Some of the most common engine applications or series of engines that they have with that lead time, a lot of them are in stock or they have really short lead times. So you can check your favorite retailer or go to dfcdiesel.com, check them out, see what's in stock, see what you can get. If you have questions, maybe you want to do something that's outside of the normal series of engines, they have tons of choices for rods, cranks, pistons, valve train upgrades, tons of different things. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over and check them out. It's a really interesting perspective because I think when I step back and I look at the industry or companies, and when I see when I see them offer everything, it's like you mentioned, it's like it's okay, but how much time can you really dedicate to that? How much manpower? I know we've talked about on podcasts before, finding people is really hard. So how are you going to find, people to bring onto your team to build all these things and just be in all these different areas? It's super hard, to do. And I think when you really narrow it down to some of those companies that focus in on like one particular part, whether it's fueling or turbos, or maybe they just do transmissions or, something like that. It's just like as a consumer, I think, okay, I know where I'm getting my transmission from. I know where I'm getting my turbo from. I know where I'm getting my tuning. It's just like, I don't know. It makes me feel better when I know they specialize just in that versus 180
Yeah.
different products and four,
Yeah.
different engines and all that kind of stuff.
You know, it's funny that you even mentioned transmissions because last weekend I was at the NHRDA and I went to the booth where Randy Reyes was at, Randy's Transmission. And him and I have been buddies for quite some time, and we get along really well. So I hung out with him in that booth for like 2 or 3 hours, and the amount of traffic that just automatic transmission dudes were lining up to talk about their specific, year, make, model and what they were trying to do, and how, like talking to Randy, him and I have kind of we're basically both younger business owners, right, in a really immature market. So listening to how his customers, he talks about like series of quality. Like you get to a point where you're all hands on and you're building the best of the best of the best, and you know that you're turning out the best product. Then you hire some guys, and some of them guys really get it and they love it and they're passionate and they build amazing stuff. And then you get one that's not near as passionate, and that guy causes you a bunch of warranties. Pretty soon, the company gets to a point where you're having to design a printout for everybody in the company to follow. Like, this is our standard operating procedure. This is how you build our injectors. This is why you build it this way. We don't care how much time it takes you right now. You'll get faster. But don't try and rethink what we've already thought of. Like, we've got too many people in one hut that have figured out this is the best way to do this for us. So just follow what we do. And he's gone through the same thing with the transmission side too. It's kind of fun because, like when you're at say a SEMA. I remember one year, Premier Performance Products brought myself and Fleece and BD and ATS and all of us, and we all shared the Premier booth. So you had like a table, and I was sitting at Dynomite's table, and there was all these different vendors that Premier
Mm.
sold, and we were all sitting there at PRI. And that booth was busy because somebody was but you almost had one guy that would walk every table, and he's like, I sell through Premier, so I buy all this stuff, kind of a thing. And then you got the one guy that walks up to you and he just wants to talk to you about injectors, but he's not interested in trainings or whatever. And then vice versa. It's just wild how it makes me really wonder, with us just making 3,000 horsepower on a common rail, and I don't want to say it was easy because it wasn't easy, but how easy it's going to make the super stock sport now. Like, instead of all of the things that super stock guys have to go through right now to get one up and running down the track, it we just took a bunch of that out. Like starting it, getting it warmed up, wet stacking, all those things are now a thing of the past. They won't need that anymore. It's not going to happen anymore. I'm excited. Like the next 6 months, it's so busy building 3-inch stuff and drag race stuff that I hate to even throw more on the guys. But the super stock guys are going to be like, hold on, wait a minute. You just did what? And all you got to do is push that button over there and it starts. Yep. It's going to light better. It's going to light easier. It's going to drive from the starting line. We can make timing 6 degrees before top dead center. We can make it 6 degrees after top dead center with just a laptop. With the best pumps, like with Hart's pump, you've got, I want to say it's 10 or 20 degrees advance built into the plunger. So if they set the static timing at 30, I think those things will swing 20 degrees. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's 20. So they end up at 50 degrees before top dead center at wide open throttle, as long as you use all the rack travel. We can alter that with just a few keystrokes and get it exactly dialed in. So driving big turbochargers for us, we've got more compression. We've got, my motor is south of 17 to 1, but north of 15 to 1. So it's a pretty much damn stock like compression ratio. And it's going to start and just drive away from a stoplight pretty easy. So now we can manipulate heat in the turbine just by programming it with a laptop, so we can put all the heat in the turbine, and once boost and or throttle position comes on, then we can start giving it advance. So we could potentially start it at 5 degrees after top dead center, and then as you rev it up, we could give it, like 30 degrees before top dead center based off keyboard. Like whoever your programmer is, however he finds that motor runs right. And it's not just the dyno number at wide open throttle. You've got 99% of the rest of the throttle that you can tune in with the laptop. And that is a big deal in drivability and startability, and I don't know, can we drive a single 5-inch turbo with ease? I don't know. I don't know that we even need to right now, but I'd be willing to bet, based off the torque curve, that the 4.8 is probably going to drive really, really, really easy. So I'm so excited about it. It's every little day is like a new milestone, and this was a huge one for me. Like personally, I've always loved and respected the Q slicks with Cummins killers, the Hazleys, the Shides. Like, one of the coolest cats on the planet is Danny Scheid. He's been doing, like truck pulling since forever ago. Like that dude, him and like David Mitchell and those guys were doing this in the early 2000s and pushing things to the point where you just can't take anything away from them. But I couldn't talk anybody into letting me build them a common rail fuel system. So I'm like, screw it, I'll just do my own. Like, I get it. What you're doing is working, but what if it could be improved on?
Is this engine setup? Is this what is going to be going in your UCC truck?
No, nah. It's probably. I think this thing's going to stay super stock this year. I believe that there's more marketing with 30 super stock weekends than there is with one weekend at UCC. I believe that.
Yeah. Well, I think the more people see something out there, it sticks with them more than just once. So I think being out there at a bunch of different races and events, different parts of the country, different things that you're doing, gets more exposure.
Oh, huge, huge. Like it's just it's like chopping a tree down. You don't do it all in one whack. You just do it, whack after whack after whack. You go to 30 different super stock pulls this year, and 30 different groups of people. They're gonna watch that thing start cold in the trailer and be like, "What just happened?" And then they're gonna watch it back out of the trailer, and they're gonna get it drug over to the sled. They're going to start it up. It's going to be warm, and depending on the ambient outside, it might be warm in 15 to 45 seconds. They're going to rev it up. It's going to drive away. And it's not going to stumble and snuff itself out. It's going to create all sorts of chaos this year.
It's cool, and it feeds into something else, and it's going to kind of transition to the next question I ask you. But when you mentioned being in Phoenix and you're there with Randy's Transmissions and you got to hear different kinds of people that come up and ask questions, and I thought back to when I was younger and more immature, but it was probably the most, I think probably the most important thing I ever saw was like around 2012, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And it was when H&S Performance did, I think, Breaking Point.
Yep.
And they live streamed it. So they had a 6.7 Cummins, a Duramax, and a 6.4 Power Stroke. And, for me, I was in the market for a diesel truck a little bit before then, and I went with a 6.7 Cummins because it's Cummins, right? It's the greatest thing ever. And I remember watching the dyno, and it like puked the 68 RFE out, and then the Duramax like puked the Allison out, and then the 6.4 made a ton of power and just kept going and going and going.
Yeah.
But what it did is it played a role and pushing companies like Randy's Transmissions and other ones out there to say, we need to build a better 68 RFE. Like, what can we build so it doesn't just puke all over itself at this power and burn up the clutches? And, what do we do with the Allison? And like before the podcast, you talked to me about an L5P you just picked up, and we were talking a bit about making more power and the injection pump and just different things. And immediately in my head, because I love transmissions, I don't know why, I just love them. And talking about them, learning, as I think, okay, well, Lenny, what are you gonna do about that 10 speed in that thing? Like, that's gonna, whatever you do with that truck, it's going to push these transmission companies to say, all right, we need to figure out how to make it hold more power and do these different things. So I love the relationship between more power, and not just the transmission, but the rest of the truck, and then ultimately, like, what you're doing with 3,000 horsepower fuel only on an engine dyno is going to lead to that guy that's making 550, 600, 650 horsepower on something that he tows with throughout the whole industry. So I wanted to kind of transition into that L5P stuff because I think that relates what you're doing and what you're learning to a truck. Somebody listening to this, I know a lot of them have L5Ps and they get out of warranty and they think, all right, well, I want a little bit more power, or I'm having this problem with the truck and the aftermarket solves it. How does this all fit together? So I wanted to ask you about your L5P, why you got it, and then what your plans are for it.
So I got it because the Duramax guys have not really intentionally been ignored by Dynomite, but we just got busy early in the day with the Cummins stuff, right? And as long as your market is good. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
So my dog had a surgery this morning, and I had to let her out and let her back in. Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so Duramax guys, we didn't intentionally leave them out, but we've just been so busy with Cummins stuff that it's always been really easy to stay busy on Cummins stuff. And at work, the guys are like, dude, we're doing all of our own in-house, like remans on Cummins stuff, and the Duramax stuff's the same. We should do that too. And I'm like, okay. So they're now doing it. I've owned an '01 LB7 for quite some time, and I like it. I like driving it. It sounds cool. It's like pre-variable vane, so it sounds like just a big block Chevy with a turbo, and it's kind of fun to drive. So recently, one of my buddies here in town bought some injectors from us, and they started horribly, like on cold startup. And I went over to his shop, and I'm like, yep, sure enough, starts bad. So I looked at the flow sheets, and I was like, okay, I know what we need to do to try and make this better. And then I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, I am so comfortable with our Cummins stuff. I would sell that to an ambulance guy in Dubai. Like, no problem. I'm very, very comfortable knowing you're going to love this. I don't have the same confidence level and all the rest of it. So now we got LB7. We've already put like a big set of injectors in it. We took it to the NHRDA, and we ran that blue collar class. We didn't win the race, but it was mile per hour the fastest truck on the track that day. So unfortunately, when we tuned it, it was on the way down. Like, this was, the guys were like, hey man, can we run the average Joe's class at NHRDA? And I'm like, we ain't got it. And they're like, well, we got the LB7. Like, what if we just, took that? And I'm like, it's stock, and it's a California emissions truck. So we bought head studs, turbo tuning, threw a 12 mil pump in it, and an exhaust kit and an air box. And Wednesday at noonish, we were in the trailer, unproven, driving it to Phoenix, Arizona, which is a 22 hour drive. And 3 hours away from the event, I got a hold of Chris at Truck Source Diesel and said, hey, dude, did you get a chance to send me that tune? And he's like, no, man, I've been busy. And I'm like, well, you're at the track. I guarantee you have been busy. And he sent me a tune, and it ripped. Like, it worked pretty damn good. Now that we're home, well, then I made the mistake of letting the guys, I let them race my L5P truck. I let them race the LB7 truck. And I was like, well, if you want to do the burnout contest, go for it. So, hell of a burnout. Like, the footage is wicked. And I was back at the trailer when it happened, but the truck ended up bouncing off the barriers there. So it not only knocked it was a brand new set of tires, like they had no miles on them. It smoked through one of the tires, made it go flat, ate up the wheel, a soda wheel that I loved. It was a soda ripsaw. And now I need two new wheels because that side of the truck, the rear wheel got destroyed because it was like aluminum on asphalt doing a burnout in the end. And then when it finally banged off the guardrail, it ruined the other wheel.
Was
That's
this
the
in,
last time we're doing a burnout contest.
was this your L5P or the LV7?
That was the LV7.
Okay.
The L5P is basically a 1 year old truck that had like 15,000 miles on it when I bought it. And it's the Z2 or R2 or ZR2 or whatever. So it's got bigger tires and, a little bit taller lift kit on it. And I like the truck a lot. But so I drove it down there and I towed my boat down to Havasu, dropped it off. Um, that thing worked so good. Like I'm I'm pretty shocked. Like and it's not I've been driving Ram trucks for a long time, so a lot of stuff that some people would be annoyed by, I was just used to it. But like the Ram truck like entertainment system is really, really glitchy with like Apple. Like they don't really mix that well together. And over the years I've been frustrated with it, but I was like, well, probably everybody does that. And now that I get into a Chevy, I'm like, whoops, not everybody does that. Like actually the L5P entertainment system sounds good, works good, and it's not Apple glitchy at all. So I drove it to Phoenix, drove it back. Kind of like the truck a lot. Really do. Like if anything irritates me, and it's all three of them, the TPMS sensors, like when you finally get the air pressure in the tires to where the truck can actually drive correctly, the stupid TPMS sensors are flashing red, which that irritates me because no truck goes down the road empty with 50 or 60 psi correctly. They all need about 36 to 40, but then the sensors are red in the dash, and that irritates me. But like I say, it's all three of them, so whatever. Outside of that, we've also got that conversion pump coming out. So it's a Pure Power Technologies DCR pump, and we brought them in. They're selling like hotcakes. So I'm fixing to throw that pump in my truck and then just start doing longevity testing, because also we've got L5P blank nozzles, and the L5P motor is really awesome. I think everybody understands the motor's pretty badass, but an 8-hole nozzle with a really tiny sack is very, very confined as to what its output potential is. So like 150% is pretty much all you can safely get out of that nozzle. But we have blanks coming, and I'm guessing that we're going to be able to put like a safe 300% in there, which means that the L5P is going to be a beast pretty soon. So, man, I fully went like, let's go full Chevy instead of part Chevy. And now my daily's an L5P, and I'll start monkeying around with that, and I'll start, driving my own nozzles here pretty quick because, well, why not? Um, we've got a friend partnership that is going to sell me like a Mazak horizontal tooling center here in April. I'm very excited about that because that's not only going to give us the ability to start making things like bodies or nozzles in-house, but there's just a whole lot to come with that. So yeah, like I kind of fell off the make my own nozzle bandwagon for a minute because interest rates are so bloody much. But right now I'm back on that bandwagon, which is why the boat's going to get consigned, and I'm buying another building, and we're planning on buying that tooling center, and I'm gonna like honestly, like the employees in my company they're doing such a good job right now. Like I want to keep feeding that, and keep them growing and keep them interested and wanting to be better. Because every time we buy some new machine, it gives another employee like a new opportunity to make a damn good wage. So as long as they're willing and interested in growing, then I'm just going to keep feeding them.
I think it's really cool how like you want to be hands on with the trucks. Like I imagine in some scenarios, in a parallel universe, there's another Dynamite Diesel. You could sit back and say to an engineer, "Okay, make me some L5P nozzles or injectors, and give me a part number and let's put them on the site." But it feels like you want to you want to drive it, you want to know how cold starts, you want to tow with it, you want to do all that stuff first. So when it does go out, it's something you've spent years with, and kind of like with Ram, how you said you've been driving them for so long, you knew all the quirks, and you didn't even think of them as quirks anymore until you go to a different brand. You're like, oh, this stuff works seamless. So I think that's a really cool. It's a really cool aspect to it that if I'm looking for injectors and watch this podcast or subscribe to your YouTube channel or follow you guys, that'd make a big difference for me.
It's, like the, in my life, like I went from like a kid that wanted to work a lot to buy toys to a guy that had three kids that had a company that had to work a lot to raise three kids and do a half-ass job going to drag races and dyno events. Because like back when you have three mechanics and your own extrude hose machine, you don't have enough money to pull the mechanics and make them help you with the race truck to go campaign for the weekend. You just don't. Like, it's not there. So I was the one, up at 2, 3 o'clock. I remember driving to California, leaving at 2 in the morning and thinking, God damn, this is getting to be a regular situation, because I've never really liked being up late at night, but I like going to work early because you get a lot of stuff done. And then at 8, when the parts house opens, you run to the parts house because you just ran out of silicone or gaskets or whatever. And then you can get the stuff at 8 o'clock in the morning. You can kind of keep working throughout the day. And I just remember how mad I used to get because like I wanted to go show the planet what my company was capable of, but it wasn't even the company, it was me. It was like whatever I could do. And I've always had mechanics that were better mechanics than I was, but I couldn't afford to take them off their jobs and pay them the same that they were getting on their jobs to work on race trucks. And if you don't have an employee that understands that you're trying to fly a flag for him as well because they're just too selfish to see it, then man, it's a frustrating life. And that, now that I don't really have that kind of people in my life, like I just want to keep pushing and growing for them, because a bunch of these people are a lot younger than me. And the more solid we can make the company, the more stable we can make the company. It not only helps my employees, but it also helps my customers. Because like if I was to pass away or whatever, like does Dynamite Diesel die? Like I would certainly hope not. I hope the legacy lives on longer than that. But if you've got a bunch of selfish people in the house, then yeah, they're going to destroy the company. And that's just what's going to happen. So trying to set things up, not only, I don't know, like yesterday, you know who Teague, like they're a marine company. They build like engines for boats and what have you.
No.
The dude's name's Bob Teague, and he's been like a boat engine guru, engineer, like he fought in Vietnam. He's just a badass dude. And he still is hands on with motors and stuff. And still, like, Teague is, it's synonymous with performance in boating. And I really enjoy that dude's outlook on life, because like he's like, man, if I gotta make something once to get this motor to fit in that boat, that's just a one-off. But if I gotta make it twice, then we make a damn part number out of it, because somebody else is gonna want that someday.
Yeah.
And then it's just up to you to educate people on the widget you just made and how easy it could make their fitment or whatever. So I kind of want to be like, when I'm all gone, I'd like people to look back and be like, hey, that dude was honest. He was hardworking. He could be a jackass, but he really did enjoy what he did for a living for a long time. And, hats off to him, because man, I really have. I've enjoyed this industry quite a bit. It's been a lot of fun. And I don't do what I do out of being forced. Now I'm doing it because I actually just enjoy it. And that probably makes me the happiest about this entire conversation. Like it's knowing that you're actually seeing that I'm passionate about it, and I'm not just some dude that's out trying to sling parts, right? Like it's cool to notice, or to know that you've actually noticed that. Like that makes me feel good.
Yeah. Well, it comes across, and it's something like doing a podcast with you for over an hour now. Like I can see it. I mean, I've always seen it, but like you have like this fan group with the podcast, and they call you like Professor Lenny when you come on because over an hour they get to hear you talk about all these different aspects to it, and we that's a whole reason. Like this is a 10-year anniversary of the Diesel podcast. The whole reason it started was because like I remember talking to you at Diesel events like way before I ever started this, or I would
Yeah.
just see you. And like once the show kind of died down and it was just like the industry insiders that were around, I'd hear jokes and hear like trash talking about my truck's going to make more, or I'm going to beat you at this thing. And it was like this really human, cool aspect to Diesel that we didn't necessarily see at a website or see in a magazine or see like, the truck with the huge trailer and the branding on it. Like the people that were in the crowd didn't really get to know that. And I thought like, man, it would really be cool to reach out to some of these people I know, hit record, talk to them for 30 to 60 minutes, now an hour, and be able to hear this stuff because when they see Dynamite Diesel products, it's like, oh, I've heard Lenny talk about that. Like he just got an L5P and he's a Ram guy and he's really excited about doing this, or he just did 3,000 horsepower on fuel only and he was talking about all these different cool things, and there's 700 or 800 episodes with that stuff. It's why I love doing it, is to hear kind of the background information and what you're working on because it humanizes the brand for me, and I can connect with you or any of the guests that I have on so much better that way.
Dude, you remember like at Clint's events, like the gauntlet challenge was something that I thought of, and the outside salesperson for Clint was like, "That's a good idea." And then he told Clint, and then Clint did the gauntlet challenge, which I'm completely cool that we went there and had a good time. But we would be out drinking and throwing down like young livers can only do, right? And then like one year I was training like wild. Like I was always in the gym. And so Clint knew that. All right, so we were at this bar and it was like getting close to closing time, and some people that were not even my friends, but they were diesel people, were getting into like a fight. And I ran over and just started shoving people around and throwing people out, and like I was having a good time. Well, that was at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And Clint heard about that. Well, he was supposed to come pick me up and take me to Armburst, that big pro club gym there. And he was like, "Well, if that dude is out at 2 o'clock in the morning, there ain't no way he's coming to the gym." So I wake up and I'm definitely a little fuzzy eyed, right? But I was like, God damn it, he must have forgot about me. Well, then I get to the gym, which was about a 2 mile jog, and it was dark and it was chilly. And I get there, and him and one of the other guys, Sean, was in there working out, and they're looking at me like, "How'd you get here?" And I go, "I jogged." And they're like, "Weren't you just drinking like 3 hours ago?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, but I wanted to come work out at this club. Like it sounded badass." And I remember thinking, like, dude, there's like 180-pound dumbbells in this place. Like, who's the ginormous meat sucker that lifts that shit up? And then, like I felt horrible. So I had to do my cardio routine, which back then was like I would grab 45-pound plates, throw them on my back, and then I would walk up the stair mill for like 3 minutes, jump down, do 30 push-ups, and then I would drop a plate, and then I would walk for 3 minutes to one plate. I'd do that for 30 minutes, like just every 3 minutes, drop a plate, pick up a plate, drop plate, pick up plate, because it was the best way to sweat ever. And now I'm like, I look back at those days like, dude, you should have never gave up on that stuff. Like you'd be a beast right now if you could still do all that. But the industry, man, like the friendships and the industry, it's always been a good time. And, I can't say that it's the most profitable in, of things that I could have chosen, because it's not. But it's definitely been something that, come the end of my years, I'll be like, I'll look back and I'll never be regretful that I spent my time doing it. Because, for the most part, I had my kids involved in a lot of it. I've made a lot of really good friends, and I've made a lot of really good customers that I still, hope to have their respect in the end. And now, like some of those early customers, like there's a gal named Rebecca Potter who just passed away, and she bought two of my pickups over the course of the years and turned them into like her own like horse haulers and stuff. And I just found out last week that she passed away, and I'm thinking, damn it, like There's so many really good people I know just from pickup trucks. And, had I not been the pickup truck mechanic, I would have never gotten to meet her, right? So, man, it's just been a lot of fun for me. That, like, this is 26 years for me now. And in June, that'll be 26 years for me.
Wow.
And I've learned a lot. And I seriously, I think that I could run a bunch of companies now, a bunch of different stuff, because the operations of any company kind of needs to be the same. Like it's step, 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 step. But I would probably choose this one again. Like if I had to do it over, and people would think I'm crazy because, a lot of people think that diesel's dying and what have you. They're full of shit. You can't move bread, grain, potatoes, gasoline on batteries. You can't do it very efficiently on gasoline. I mean, if you want to challenge me, like I will take my brand new L5P and you can run down to the Ford, Chevy, Toyota, Nissan dealer and get any, half ton, 3/4 ton pickup you want that uses spark plugs and petrol. And like you and me can go for a 100-mile tow. And when I'm there drinking coffee and hanging out, we will total up the amount of gasoline you burnt compared to diesel, and I will have crushed you. Now, if you're going to go for like a full day drive, like, if I leave here and I'm driving to Havasu, that's a 19-hour drive. Like the amount of time that you don't have to stop on the side of the highway to get gas every 300 miles or every 150 miles is going to save you half a day. So diesel's here to stay. And we're literally just getting into it. Like we're starting to do C15, ISX 15, Cummins QSK. So like I feel like my company has gotten so good at it that we can afford to jump into big rig stuff and big generator stuff or fracking pump stuff because the liability of those things going down is pretty immense and your customers have no patience.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling so content. We've got 2 new rate trace stands that are supposed to be in Seattle on the 17th and possibly in Hayden on the 19th. Electrician's already on the line, like we're ready to go. So we will be the only country we'll be the only shop in America that I'm aware of that has 3 benches to measure rate shape on. And I could be wrong, but I just don't think there's that many. You don't need rate shape for everything, but it's damn nice to have on some really critical stuff. So again, man, like as long as my employees are wanting to grow and wanting to do a better job, I'm just going to continue feeding them and letting them show me and the rest of the world that they're capable of doing it all.
This is a really cool conversation to hear about. I mean, not just the 3,000 horsepower on fuel, but the L5P that you're jumping into and laying the groundwork for the vision you have for those injectors and some really cool stuff this year. So it was cool to connect with you. Time goes by so fast in between when I talk to you, and so much happens,
Yeah.
and changes. But I encourage everybody that's listening or watching this to make sure they follow Dynomite Diesel on social media. You guys post a lot of really cool stuff, and like it hits there first, and then I love deep diving with you, after it and having the conversation. So it was really cool to chat with you today, Lenny, and I'll be looking forward to seeing not just that engine, but your UCC trucks and other things you guys have planned this year. So it'll be cool.
Yeah, things are changing always, but I will keep you abreast. And no, man, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast every single time. So thank you.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 20TD8 FR26 to get 20% off your order. Kershaw's got a whole lineup of knives to meet any budget that you might have, whether it's a new knife for EDC, hunting, fishing, something around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different handle designs, opening mechanisms, and you also get free shipping over $50. So we really appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters: Robert, John, TSW Diesel, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 10 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2026. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.